Before we start the show, I've been notified that AMPTP and SAG-AFTRA have gone back to the negotiating tables. We won't know too much about negotiations prior to this episode being uploaded, but I do ask that while we're waiting on said results, or if they're going to continue negotiations until next week, that you continue your support for our fellow actors. As always, once again, I'll provide links for those willing to donate to those who are in need. If you can't afford to donate, please spread the word across social media platforms or join them in picketing. If I know any more information on the SAG-AFTRA strike, I'll make sure to inform you as soon as I can. Until then, hang in there and keep up the good work, SAG-AFTRA. Hello, listeners. Welcome to the Lone Screenplay Nominee Podcast, where we talk about films that were solely nominated for an Oscar in the writing categories. I'm your host, Matthew Anderson, and today we have Christina Birro, who is a freelance journalist, a host of her own podcast, Pop Cultural Confidential, and a member of the Critics' Choice Association, if I'm correct, my memory serves me correct. Welcome to the show, Christina. How are you doing today?
Hi, Matthew. I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm glad that I was able to bring you on, and who would have known that the past year's Oscars of like a brief discussion of us talking about All Quiet on the Western Front would lead us to finally collaborating on an episode here.
I know. See those Oscars bringing people together.
Yeah, exactly. Whether for better or for worse, but we'll get more into that.
In this case,
Oh
okay.
yeah, no. For this one's a good case. Oh, definitely. Regardless of what I have to say about this movie, I'm glad to have another guest on. But I'll keep my thoughts on the movie a secret for now. But before we dive into our episode, I have our general questions I'd like to ask our guest whenever they come on. So I mentioned that you were a freelance journalist, and of course you have your own podcast, Pop Cultural Confidential, excuse me. Would you care to explain what exactly it is you do on your own podcast, or what exactly it is you do for a
Sure.
living, like for those who aren't aware of what a freelance journalist role is?
Of course. So for my podcast, I interview people in film and TV, everyone from actors to directors to writers, and I cover film festivals and industry news and things. Like this week, I've talked to Errol Morris about his John le Carré documentary Pigeon Tunnel. Coming up, I'm talking to Sofia Coppola. Then I have lots of shows that are sort of about upcoming films and themes and things like that. And as a journalist, I was a producer for a long time on different talk shows. But as a freelance journalist, I have a segment on TV that I do every Tuesday where I talk about the Hollywood industry, and then I moderate and lots of different things to make ends meet.
Yeah, especially with this economy where we're practically being asked to
Right?
give up our free time in the day and on the weekends just to pay our dues. So yeah, but yeah, you gotta pay the bills somehow. So yeah. The other question I also want to ask is, it's always tough to ask someone what their favorite film is. So instead of asking what is your favorite film, what exactly is your favorite genre of film, so to speak?
That's hard too. I really am an omnivore, I have to say, and I mean that for real. I mean, I love a good horror film. I love a good
Mhm.
rom-com. My thesis way back when in film school was Tarantino. I'd say one of my favorite movies is like a Sunset Boulevard.
Oh.
So that's just to give you a little thing. I don't think I can pick anything in particular or a particular genre either, but those are a few examples, maybe.
Yeah, Tarantino is one that I got a chance to talk with on it was the 300 Passions podcast. I got a chance to talk about what was the film? Was it True Romance? Tony Scott directed it.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I got a chance to talk about that. And yeah, Tarantino is a really interesting filmmaker in of himself, and I'm Apparently, he's got one more film left in him, but whatever it is, I'm curious to see what that's going to be. Um,
Cannot wait.
yeah,
I hope it's not his last one. I hope that's just hyperbole, but let's
I
see.
mean, I mean, what was it? This up as we're recording, Killers of the Flower Moon is coming out, and if this is if this ends up being Martin Scorsese's final film, I'm like, he ended on a really high note. So,
Oh wow, yeah.
regardless of what we have to think about that film, it's like
But Tarantino isn't quite 81 yet.
that's true. He's got some years left in him. So yeah, I think we, if it's all right with you, Christina, I think we might as well just jump right into our
Of
discussion
course.
for our episode, where today we'll be discussing When Harry Met Sally, a film from 1989. As always, this won't be a beat by beat bulletin presentation like you hear on other channels, but we will be discussing major spoilers for our discussion, so to speak. If you haven't seen the movie yet, I don't know why it took you this long. I mean, granted, it took me this long to see it, so I'm part of the blame too. But if you want to hear our full thoughts on it, just watch the movie first and then come back to hear us talk about it. With that said, I'm gonna just get through quick set of notes on the production details for this. Known for directing Stand By Me and The Princess Bride, Rob Reiner had discussed with Nora Ephron, who is our writer of the film for When Harry Met Sally, about an idea of two friends never having sex because it could ruin their friendship. She ended up interviewing Rob and others about their dating life to create Harry and Sally. Reportedly, the first draft of the film didn't have the two of them end up together by the end, which kind of surprised me a little bit. But at the same time, I could see why. They were trying to avoid that for so long when writing several drafts of this script. If anything, they wanted to ask questions about the idea of men and women, being just friends without having sex. When Harry Met Sally was distributed by Columbia Pictures in a limited release on July 12th, 1989, and expanded nationwide as word of mouth grew. One note I also want to give to our guests is I couldn't find too much notes or much of a timeline in terms of like when this film was shot. Were there any production disasters, so to speak, or any kind of hiccups, with the filming process of it. So I assume everything went well, and anything additional in terms of like the improv stuff we'll bring up in our notes later. Actually, in just a minute. On a production budget of $16 million, the film made an estimated of $92.8 million worldwide. And outside of its sole writing nomination for Nora Ephron, she did win the BAFTA Award for Original Screenplay. Kudos to her. And was nominated at the Writers Guild of America in the original screenplay category alongside Crimes and Misdemeanors, Dead Poet Society, and Sex, Lies, and Videotapes. One day down the road, I will be covering Sex, Lies, and Videotapes, so stay tuned on that. And it also received a nomination from the Directors Guild of America and got 5 Golden Globe nominations, which that kind of shocked me a little bit. In Picture for Comedy Musical, Lead Actor for Billy Crystal in Comedy Musical, Meg Ryan for lead actress in comedy musical, director, and screenplay. And due to his contributions to the soundtrack, Henry Connick Jr. won a Grammy Award for Best Jazz Male Vocal Performance. And as far as the reputation this film has preceded, outside of the infamous line we will get to in a moment, over the years, the film was chosen by the American Film Institute for their top 100 laughs in 100 years at number 23. It's ranked right now, and was selected for preservation by National Film Registry by the Library of Congress in 2002. Excuse me, 2022. Sorry. Didn't get much sleep, but anyways, gonna push through. So our log line for the film is Harry and Sally meet on a crossroad country trip and turn their feud into a lasting friendship over the course of, I believe, 12 years of the film, until love threatens to ruin everything. So,
That was
yeah.
great.
So since you chose the film, I wanted to ask, what was your experience like in seeing this for the first time, or how did you discover this?
Well, I didn't see it in '89. I was a bit young, but around my college years, I definitely saw it. I've seen it so many
Hmm.
times. I think you asked me to choose between a few films, and since I knew we were going to be speaking to each other during the fall, this is just the perfect
Yep.
fall movie. I mean, it's the perfect New York fall movie. It's the foliage, the sweaters, Washington Square Park. On a personal note, I got married around close to Washington Square Park and have spent many almost once a year in that area. So that has nothing to do with the film, but
Nice.
I just get really nostalgic every time their car drives up. I see, the first part of these three parts of the movie when the car drives up to the arch there and he walks away, and there's something that's very nostalgic about that. And otherwise, I'm trying to figure out if you like the movie or not. But in my case, I think it's really incredible. We're going to get into more detail, I guess, but there's certain movies where magic happens at a certain time. These group of people come together. In this case, Reiner and Efron and Harry Connick and these two actors, and it just works. It's just magic. Perfect rat-a-tat dialogue, and the 90 minutes of this film is just lean, mean machine. Every scene is, for me, perfect. There's nothing, it doesn't go overly long. Sure, we can discuss whether the premise of if men and women really can't be friends is the thing that is a bit dated in this movie, but we're going to discuss why they came to that. And as a rom-com, I just think it's one of the best in the genre.
I
So that's why I chose
Yeah,
it.
no, I figured you had a very distinct connection to it, like most of our guests had when choosing their film for the most of the time. For me, I think I've been very vocal on the show before. I recall saying that I'm not the biggest fan of romantic comedies just because they always fall into the similar trappings. In fact, I think we're about to get one later this year, assuming the strikes are done, that is,
Right.
with oh god, Anyone But You, I think it was, with Sydney Sweeney and
Sweeney.
and Gwen Powell. So they always fall into these, like, typical trappings of, like, the couple hate each other and by the end they're gonna fall in love with each other. There's like a third act breakup, or like, a falling out or a misunderstanding or whatever. And I will say, I actually think this was pretty good. I could definitely see why a lot of people fell in love with this. I personally enjoyed it. I liked it. I'm not quite on, like, the head over
Yay,
heels. Yeah,
Matthew!
I know. And even my mom, I was,
To quote the film, how optimistic of you, Matthew.
yeah, I did.
You're embracing life in this
Yeah,
matter.
I mean,
In this
it's
matter.
really tough for me to get invested in romantic comedies, but there's very few out there that I enjoy, and this is definitely one that I was like, yeah, I enjoy it. There's at least a handful. Silver Linings Playbook is one that I actually enjoyed a fair
Mm-hmm.
amount. But yeah, I think what worked about this, and you brought up a really good point, like the writing from Nora Ephron is quite good, and I don't think I've ever seen a film written by her, and it's unfortunate too because she's no longer with us. I think she had passed
Mm-hmm.
away in 2000.
You haven't seen Silkwood or
No,
Sleepless in
no.
Seattle or You Got
I've
Mail?
I've
Mm-hmm.
never seen any of them. I know my mom has seen You've Got Mail, and I recall that she wasn't a big fan of Sleepless in Seattle, but she's more into the rom-com chick flick movies than I am, and she gives me a
Mm-hmm.
lot of guff, like, why don't you enjoy more of these romantic comedies? I'm like, because they're fluffy, and I want more. I don't want just cotton candy stuck to my teeth. I want more that'll stick with me
Well,
on a
if I can
positive
just
level.
go, the thing about Nora Ephron is, and why I think you feel this way about this movie, is that her writing is not cotton candy.
Yeah.
I mean, if you know her story, she wrote, she was married to Carl Bernstein, All the President's Men journalist. And when they divorced, she wrote the book Heartburn, which was a real um, not just everyone was talking about it at that time, and that movie was great too. She went on to write
Mhm.
Silkwood, and she has a certain bite in her writing that makes it something else, and that's why these dialogues between this group of people. I mean, she is basically Sally. Rob Reiner, they were really good friends. He's Harry. They talked about this all the time. He had just gone through a really painful divorce from Penny
Yep.
Marshall. So a lot of the things that she was interviewing him about was that. And I mean, Rob Reiner, for God's sake, you were mentioning Stand By Me. We also have, Spinal Tap, Misery, A Few Good Men. He has a pretty good list of movies himself. But then you bring on his best friend, Billy Crystal, and all the improv they did together during the filming of this, as well as Meg Ryan, who we hadn't seen other than in Top Gun at that point. And it just became this magic between these people. You mentioned Harry Connick Jr., that jazz.
Yes. Uh,
Yeah, that his soundtrack, and I just want to mention the other two, Carrie Fisher
yes.
and Bruno Kirby, rounding out this group, which giving the dialogue between the four of these friends, the telephone calls, the four-way phone call, and Carrie Fisher, who also adds this little biting commentary that she does. She's so amazing. I so wish she would have done even more of this type of movies. And for me, that's what I was talking about, that this made magic that these people got together at this time to make this movie. And the reason why the ending is the way it is that you were mentioning, that they change it so much, is that Rob Reiner, having gone from this really difficult divorce, actually fell in love during the making of this movie with his future wife. And so he was in a positive mode.
Yeah.
And apparently that's one of the reasons they changed the ending, because they wanted it to be romantic. I'm sure there were other reasons as well. That was more commercial and things like that. But it's kind of lovely that it followed their personal lives so
Huh.
much.
Yeah, those definitely are like one of the better ones. You know, even if I'm not the biggest fan of them, I'm like, at least you were able to pour something out of your life and put it into film. I'm like, okay, there's at least an
Right.
emotional connection. I could see why you did that film. I'm sorry, but let me backtrack real quick. Am I correct in saying you said Meg Ryan was in Top Gun, the original?
Uh-huh.
Okay,
Right.
I keep forgetting
She
she was in that.
she's the widow. Don't you
That's
remember?
okay. Yeah, it's been a
Yeah.
while since I've seen it because I don't know
Yeah.
why.
And that's basically, if I remember
Yeah.
correctly, that was basically what she had done when she got the role as Sally.
Okay.
She hadn't been in a lot of things. So this was like a really
Oh.
big, lead role for her after just this and maybe a few smaller things.
Okay, because I read somewhere too that Molly Ringwald, I think, almost got the part, but then Meg Ryan had convinced
Yeah.
Rob Reiner or someone to give her the part. But she was good. She's very good in this, and because I kept thinking all throughout the movie, I'm like, have I seen Meg Ryan in anything before? And I'm like, no, I don't think I have. And then yeah, you brought up Top Gun. I'm like, okay, that explains. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, no, I really like
She's Goose
yeah,
wife.
Goose's wife. Yeah,
Yeah.
the Billy Crystal, I think, does a pretty good job in the film. Although I don't know about you, but no matter how much of a I don't know if it was like a wig or like a haircut they did at the opening, I cannot buy him as a college student, even one who graduated.
Oh,
That's just me
when
though.
we have to yeah, we have to get into this quick. I mean, all the hair in this movie, and Meg Ryan's different haircuts have been widely discussed through the
Oh
years. They're
really?
really horrible.
Oh wow.
And yeah, it's one of the things that has been discussed. And I totally agree. It's like with his first haircut, where they sort of glued down
Yeah,
sideburns.
I'm like,
That's that one of the minuses of this movie. I'm completely with you
yeah,
there.
I am thinking like I get it. It was like late '80s, early '90s. This kind of film was made. Like you didn't have. I don't know. Maybe it's just because also part of it too is I'm used to Billy Crystal, like modern Billy Crystal, or at least like the late '90s when he did the Oscar host stints and did a hilarious job, and
Hmm.
then he did
Hmm.
like Analyze This and some other things. So maybe that's why I was just like I can't like. Is it just me? Is it the bad wig?
No, it's
Oh,
not
okay,
just you.
all right. I wasn't too sure. But yeah, no, you and yeah, Carrie Fisher, rest in peace.
Oh,
She was fantastic in this. She works, and I'll jump back to Billy Crystal in a minute though. But with Carrie Fisher, that role could have easily been annoying, in terms of like the way her character is very, I guess kind of have these like snappy one liners and such. And if you didn't write the role, if you didn't have a good enough writer like Nora Ephron or a good enough casting decision to have Carrie Fisher play this role, I think it would have been a much more annoying role. And you kind of have to rely on her, even though she's a supporting role, to sort of, be sort of the, what do you call it? I guess like the conscience for
hmm. Hmm.
Meg Ryan's character Sally. in order to, try to motivate her to be like, go out there and try to find another man, and
But she's also at the same time a cynic, and she's stuck in that relationship where everyone keeps telling her he's never gonna leave
yeah,
because she's stuck in a relationship with a married man who's obviously never gonna leave his wife. It's obvious to everyone except Carrie Fisher's role.
yeah.
And just that whole thing around her and how they fall in love, the two best friends and the best friends that should have been them,
Mhm.
and they fall in love instead. It's just a wonderful little circle.
That whole scene with them going on a double date, I thought was a bit
Oh,
humorous, not just because of them like Carrie Fisher and the other guy were like, oh, we're actually compatible, not the other way around. And then when they both talked separately on their own times, they're like, oh yeah, you don't want to, she's in a very they're in a very emotional state. You don't want to, break it up, wait like a week or two to contact them, and then
yeah, don't date
yeah,
her
don't date
now.
her
Yeah,
now.
it's like
Wait a week or a month later to call to date her, and then immediately they're like, "Oh, let's get a taxi." And then taxi, and then the two just leave. And I thought, okay, that was funny.
and pesto's the quiche of the 80s is also a great line.
I'm sorry.
Pesto is the quiche of the 80s is also because he's a food journalist,
Oh,
and that's
gotcha.
one of his lines. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It just shows. I mean, it clearly shows that I was born in the '80s and I lived through that.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, no, but yeah, but I thought that was good, and obviously, I mean, we cannot, talk about this movie without bringing up the famous scene of the movie, which is the "I'll have what she's having" line.
Yeah.
And I find it hilarious that, well, one that was delivered by, I believe, Rob Reiner's mother,
His mother. Yeah.
who passed away, I think, in the mid 2000s. I could be mistaken, but yes, but yeah, it was a great like line delivery, the way she delivered that. And it's even funny too because I didn't even watch the movie in full until the other night in preparation for the episode, but I was well aware of the scene just from watching it in psychology class years ago in Stevenson University, but also when I think it was like on DVD commercials or like ads for it where it's like, they show all the like MGM or whatever studio owned it at the time was like, oh yeah, look at all of our classics. And then, like shows like a cut down version of that. And I'm like, okay, that's funny. But yeah, no, it's a great scene, obviously. And I found out too that when they test, I don't know if this is 100% true or not. Maybe you can correct me on this, but apparently when they test screened this movie, and they showed that line, all the guys weren't laughing at all, but all the women were.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, that's great.
They're like, really? This really happens?
Yeah.
The guys are, yeah. I know that it was 61 takes, which must have been exhausting for poor Meg Ryan.
Yeah.
Yeah, until they got that done. Yeah, I mean, that is definitely pop culture history, that scene in movies. I mean it's the scene I might be most sort of tired of, just for the reasons that you're saying, that's the one that's always
Sure.
representative of this movie, while I think there's other ones where I watched the movie again also in preparation of this, where I'm like surprised again and again and again how brilliantly composed some of these scenes are.
Do you have any on the top of on the top of your head that come to mind in terms of like, oh wow, I was actually like impressed how well they did that?
Oh, sure. I can mention two. Um, and why is because I think a lazy rom-com or a lazy movie in general, if you have a scene where your one friend is telling another friend something really important or life-changing, you can have a scene where they're sitting over a table and having coffee, or just the thing that Rob Reiner does in this movie is that he puts so much into these scenes. So one of my favorites is the baseball divorce
Yep.
scene, as I call it, when Bruno Kirby and Billy Crystal are at a baseball game, and Billy Crystal is telling the story of this awful way he found out that he was getting a divorce.
Yeah, that was great.
And at the same time that they're having this really horrible conversation, where his friend, played by Bruno Kirby, is just really empathetic and, oh my God, Mr. Zero knew before you that you were getting a divorce. They're doing the wave.
Yeah, with the football. Yeah.
And I think that's just an amazing way to give us many, many things in one scene. You understand their friendship,
Mhm.
that he's very supportive. You understand what he's going through. And we also have this amazing setting where they're doing this. And they tend to do a lot of their deep discussions, these two friends, around doing sports things.
Mhm.
There's another scene where he talks about that he made a woman meow like a cat for an orgasm. And they're practicing hitting the ball at another place. So I think I have a feeling that Billy Crystal and Rob Reiner would have their deep discussions in ways like that. And the other scene I think is amazing, that I can't get over is or it's actually both of them, but the Casablanca phone
Yeah.
conversation when they're watching Casablanca, and there you see how good friends they've become. They're not lovers. This is the third part of the movie where they've actually really become friends. They need each other. They talk about their divorces. But you get a throwback to the conversation they had in the car when they were driving back from college, or when they were driving from college to New York. And she said that she would have rather stayed uh, with Humphrey Bogart,
Mm.
and this point they realize, no, I never said that, and they have this conversation. Then, and at the same time that they're watching the movie and the end scene come, I also adore the conversation after that evening you were referencing, when they go out on a
Yeah.
date, and or no, they're together, Bruno Kirby and
Carrie
Carrie
Fisher.
Fisher, and they call to say that they've slept together.
Mhm.
So there you actually have a four-way phone conversation where you were getting all this information, which apparently also was a really difficult thing to shoot. And they did many, many takes of it and actually did them at the same time, if I understand
Yeah, I remember
correctly.
reading through. I think it was on IMDb. They had stated that by the time they got through the whole phone conversation, the guy with the mustache, I cannot remember. I apologize.
His name is Bruno Kirby. I
Bruno.
can't remember what his name is. Yeah.
Bruno, yeah, Bruno. He would flub a line and they go, "Got to do the whole thing, guys."
Yeah.
Just because even though we got through the whole phone conversation, we did that perfectly. It's like, yep, you flipped the line. It very much is like stage, play, stage, theater acting, so to speak, where you flub a line. It's, for that scene, it's like got to start it again. If during rehearsals, that is. Um, but yeah.
But that's one of the reasons I think the movie is so tight
Mhm.
and so is that he really, Rob Reiner and Nora Ephron have really found ways to include exposition in interesting themes and
Yeah.
scenes. So we get everything a little bit at once, and we have no sort of extra stuff we have to go through. We get the explanations at the same time. When they're out buying a wedding present for their best friends, and singing karaoke, that's when Billy Crystal sees his ex-wife and has a total breakdown, and everything is happening at the same time that they're doing something else, which makes it really interesting, I think.
And the other thing too about it is a really good director would know that their actors would have to use a lot of playable action. So, like you said, instead of having two people sitting down having coffee, they would go to a baseball, or the Carrie Fisher and Meg Ryan would go to a bookstore and find books, very talking about their life, so to speak, and that's that's something a really good director and a good writer needs to do, because otherwise you want to make if you want to make your scene come across, and you don't want to have the actor just say the line. It's like, it's a lot better if you just give them playable action. How about, are they eating an apple? Are they going to be throwing a football,
Right.
whatever? And it's things like that that make it work. But yeah, I'm glad you brought up the football scene, because I was going to do that too, because I liked how Nora Ephron subverted our expectations into thinking like, oh, just in case you were paying attention, that's not the truth. The truth is she cheated on me with some guy
Yeah,
from accounting. I'm
exactly.
like, that's great. I'm like, because I was kind of caught off guard. I'm like, okay, that's a good way. And like you said, this is Nora Ephron and Rob Reiner together are like, okay, how do we try to do a romantic comedy that is definitely within your, in lesser hands would have been just kind of fine or just okay, and try to make it as best as we can. And the other thing I also have to credit with Billy Crystal, going back to him, I was, because I haven't seen a whole lot of Billy Crystal like acting, so to speak. I already stated before, I've known him for mostly the Oscars and such. but I'm glad that they casted Billy Crystal in the role. And obviously, yes, there were other great actors who were, possible picks, like Tom Hanks, I think at one point was going to play the role. Albert Brooks was going to play it, but I think he
Hmm.
had rejected it because it would have felt too much like a Woody Allen film, which is ironic because Crimes and Misdemeanors came out that same year.
Yeah,
Um,
which a lot of people, a lot of critics when it first came out dismissed When Harry Met Sally because it was sort of a New York
mhm.
film and it was Woody Allen. But I think that over the years, people have seen this on its own merit.
Oh yeah, definitely. And
Yeah, go ahead.
I haven't seen a whole lot of Woody Allen films except for a few, but yeah, this is definitely much different than something that Woody Allen would do to begin with. But but with Crystal though, I like he's really good with the comedic chops, and he, is hired for the improv, but also even just some of his singing talent, which isn't shown a whole lot, but even just the karaoke scene, I'm like, yeah, okay, that's why you hired him. And he shows off just like enough of his acting chops, like dramatic wise, like when he has that breakdown. It's like, okay, this is a good,
Hmm.
a good show for what Billy Crystal can do as a dramatic actor. And even my mom always says, some of the great dramatic actors come from comedians. You look at the rate.
Yeah, Robin
Yep.
Williams. No.
Robin Williams is one
Yep.
who was like, yeah, like look at the stuff that he's done. Otherwise we would have known him as what was it, the guy from Mork and Mindy, I think it was.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then you see him in stuff like Good Will Hunting and Fisher King, and it's like, wow, this guy had range. So yeah, I props to Billy Crystal and whoever decided to throw him a bone for the role.
I agree. And just to talk about some of the improv scenes are pretty amazing. Apparently, the whole when they're at the museum and he does the whole pepper my popper kosh,
Yeah.
that was apparently something that Meg Ryan had no idea was going to happen. So when he starts with that voice, there's a point where she looks over in our direction. That there she was looking at Rob Reiner and the camera going, and he's like, follow,
Yeah.
follow. And that was amazing. And I've heard, I'm not 100% sure how much of it, but at least parts of the last incredible, very rom-commy last speech he makes for her at the New Year's Eve party, where he says, when you figure out you want to spend the rest of your life with someone, you want the rest of your life to start now. A lot of that was improvised too.
Wow.
So he like the you have this little thing in your forehead. I mean, he says these things. Apparently, he improvised a lot of it, and that
Mm.
you can sort of tell. You can tell that she's getting caught off guard, and
Mhm.
that it's very personal. So he was a great choice, and I also think that again, this is like the fourth time I say it. I'm
No,
sorry,
you
but
go ahead.
the fact that I think this group of people were friends. They knew each other, they had the same sensibilities, and you can feel that in the movie. They're actually taking things that they've, making fun of each other's friendships or taking serious things that have happened to them in relationships. And I think that's what really, the fact that they cast this group and it's the writer and director behind them were friends, and you can feel that. I think it gives it that special, special something.
You definitely do, and like I said, it's a lot more genuine than two people who have never been friends, never had any sort of connection, and they're trying to like artificially create this like rom com. They're like, we got to fit all the pieces in here, like what's like a typical rom com would do. Even adding the whole.
Yeah,
Go
like
ahead.
for me, like Sleepless in Seattle,
No, no,
sorry.
go ahead.
That to me, that has not never, I mean, I think it's a good movie. It's not a bad movie, but it never affected me as much as this one
Hmm.
because that has what you're talking about, that more constructed element, where they don't meet each other until the end and things like this feels like much more like they're having a good time all at once.
Yeah, definitely.
But
Yeah, like I said, I was definitely impressed by it, and was yeah, again for a rom-com, I'm like, yeah, this is like what? Like Matthew enjoyed a rom-com? That's
I
nuts.
love
Um
it.
I'm just looking through my notes right now. The one thing I keep forgetting was a thing in the 80s or 90s was the card contact thing. Just because I never grew like by the time I grew up and had any kind of like, phone contacts with anyone, it was already plugged into my phone. I didn't have to rely on like, ooh, let me pull out of my bag the
Oh, you
little.
mean the
Yeah, the
Rolodex?
Rolodex, that's what
Yeah.
it was. Okay, yeah. Again, just shows that I was clearly born in the 80s and lived through
But
this.
yeah, I can say I was young and I never had a Rolodex with any guys.
Yeah. And then the other thing was in terms of the montage segments of the film, which are handled pretty well. The one I really liked was, and I think this is part of the reason why I could relate to these characters, is like Sally, I'm a bit of a picky eater myself. And I love the moment when they're at the Asian cuisine or restaurant, and you could just see in a like without any like dialogue, you could just see the waiter just like
She's using
just like writing down on the pad and then just turn his head to Billy Crystal, like, what the hell do you see in her? And I thought that was great. I thought, okay, that's good. Yeah, it just again, just like really good directing from everyone, and there's even a couple other lines that I enjoyed, like when Meg Ryan finds out that her boyfriend was cheating on her, with some accountant in his workplace. And she's like, she's crying, and she's on the bed, like, I'm gonna be 40, yeah, in 8 years.
when?
Yeah,
Yeah, in eight
yeah,
years,
I thought that was
soon,
great.
sometime.
Even with her trying to get out of the New Year's party at the very end, and she tells Carrie Fisher, "I'm going home. You'll never get a taxi." And she just goes along with the guy, like a fake laugh, to whatever his jokes were. I thought that was funny. And the other thing when Harry and Sally got together, I don't know if you ever had this, if you thought about this, when they finally got to, had sex together. The whole time I kept thinking was Pam from The Office telling when she told Michael, you're just a rebound." That's
Yeah.
all I thought of was that, and I thought that was great. In terms of directorial choice, it was nice to show that Rob Reiner didn't show the actual like full on gratuitous sex, because it wouldn't have worked for this kind of movie, because it's not explicit, so to speak, like showing. It's a lot of telling, and
Right.
and because it's done in this more naturalistic way, it's like, why are we doing this whole dialogue conversation that you're doing pretty well and kind of sophisticated in, and then be a bit more, not crass, but more like very showing with the nudity. And I'm glad they didn't do that. They're like, nope, we're not going to do that. We're just going to show them afterwards in bed after they kiss, and everyone knows what happens. So I thought that was good. It was a good choice for him to do as a director. The other thing too, at the beginning when they were driving around through New York City, because I keep when it started, I was like, hey, wait, like, wasn't this shot in, like, I don't know, late 90s, early 2000s? And then when I saw the two towers in the background, I thought,
Yeah. Yeah.
okay, I forgot this is 1989.
A9. Yeah.
But yeah, it's still, like I said, I haven't seen not usually a big fan of romantic comedies to begin with, but I thought this one was definitely one of the better ones that I've seen for sure. And I'm glad I saw it. If nothing else, I do want to see more Rob Reiner films, because I've only seen about
Hmm.
like two or three. Because I've seen A Few Good Men, which is pretty good.
Yeah.
And then
And you've seen
I
Misery?
have not.
Stephen King.
That's the other
Yeah.
big
So.
one. I think Stand By Me. That's also a lone screenplay nominee, so I'll get around to that in the future. Just
Mhm.
not this year though. There's no way. Um, but yeah, other than that, unless there's any other final remarks you want to make about the movie itself before we go into the awards
I think
conversation.
you said. I mean, Um, I think you've mentioned most of it, I have to say. So I'm happy that you and it's fun how well it still holds up.
Yeah,
That you can do a first viewing 2 days ago in 2023, and you're still feeling that isn't too dated, and that it's the dialogue is crisp, and I love that.
yeah, yeah. Like I said, I was just, I was like, if nothing else, it makes me admire that, like you said, it's just a bunch of actors who are clearly friends, or have or created a relationship together over the course of the film on set, be implemented on the screen, and you see a lot of that passion go into it, which is
Yeah.
nice. Um,
No, I'm good. We can continue on to whatever you were thinking.
Yeah, well, no, like I said, I was just going to go right into the awards question I had. So now we're into the little award section before we sign off officially, because I do have I had some questions, or at least some comments I wanted to ask regarding with its awards chances. What I assume you think this is worthy of its sole writing nomination, and would you have nominated it for any other categories?
Well, I mean, I definitely think this is worthy of the writing nominations, but it was an amazing year. I wrote down the other ones. So it was Dead Poet Society, Crimes and Misdemeanors, Woody Allen, you mentioned, Spike Lee's Do the
Yep.
Right Thing, and Sarah Soderbergh's Sex Lies Videotape, and Nora Ephron. It's an amazing group of contenders there, and I absolutely think that this was worth the nomination. Um, I would have loved to have seen Carrie Fisher in supporting. I think it's such an amazingly, as you were saying as well, this that supporting could have been that really boring rom-com best friend
Mhm.
that we see in so many boring
Yeah.
rom-coms, and this was just taking it up such a notch. And just the fact that, this is Princess Leia, this is, she had all these other connotations, and she's so good. I would love that. And I definitely think that Rob Reiner could have gotten a um, director nomination. That was a pretty good year as well, with Oliver Stone and Kenneth Branagh. But this was also the year that Driving Miss Daisy won.
Yep.
Um, and I would say that there's quite a few others I would have rather see win Best
Yeah.
Picture
I haven't even
than
seen
that one.
Driving Miss Daisy
But
yet, and I don't know if I ever
um,
will. But I can already tell you that
yeah,
there's other
compared to
movies.
just a few of the ones I mentioned here, I don't know exactly who was Best Picture. I don't remember. But there was a lot more to choose from than
Yeah,
that.
I'm looking through the Best Picture lineup. Oh Jesus. Okay. Born on the 4th of July, Dead Poet Society, Field of Dreams, and My Left Foot were the Best Picture
All
nominees.
of them
Yeah.
better than
Um.
Davis Daisy.
Yeah. It's
But what do you think? I'm curious what you do. You think there should have been nominated for something else,
I guess just
after seeing it now?
I guess in terms of its competition, I mean, a performance like Billy Crystal's and Meg Ryan is very good, but it's not one that the Academy would personally consider, especially even in now. I mean, hell, we're about to get into the Oscar race in the next couple months, and I guarantee you, we're probably going to be filled with a bunch of biopic performances and a bunch of like best picture frontrunners, so to speak, that are like really timely and very have a lot of social commentary. And not that this doesn't have any,
Hmm.
a commentary relevance, because it kind of does. But I think part of the reason also it got the screenplay nomination was because of its relevance. I mean, it made a lot of money and it was
Hmm.
such a popular film. It's like, okay, it's going to get the screenplay nomination. What else can we get it? And it just seems like, yeah, Billy Crystal.
And
Yeah, go ahead.
considering that it was up against Woody Allen, um, who many critics sort of dismissed this movie in favor of Woody Allen, so it was pretty good that it actually did get the screenplay nomination.
Yeah, and I'm just looking through here. Yeah, and you're right about the original screenplay category. Like, that's a really good lineup. I've only seen 3 of them. Dead Poet Society is pretty good. I enjoyed it. That's also another really good dramatic work from Robin Williams. And
Hmm.
yeah, Do the Right Thing was kind of robbed. Like, it should have gotten more
Oh
nominations.
God, that
Yeah.
that he and that not just kind of robbed, it
Yeah,
was
no, I
robbed.
was.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but even too, like, it's funny how history tends to repeat itself years later when Driving Miss Daisy wins again practically with Green Book, and this time
yep,
Spike Lee was able to finally win his overdue Oscar for Black Klansman, a justified win in my
right.
opinion. And yeah, it just shows there's things about the Academy that will change, and but there's other things that the Academy are clearly not ready to change for.
It always stay the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um yeah, but I'm trying to think if there's anything else for When Harry Met Sally, cuz like I said, the only thing it really had a shot at getting was original screenplay. The one credit I did want to bring up, which I don't think I mentioned in my in the review section, the editing is very good. Because when it was over, I was
It
like, wait,
is.
that was 90 minutes. Okay, that was pretty good.
I know.
Um,
And the montages and all that's lovely, and the music. Um, we're not gonna give it hair and makeup, I guess,
no, hair and makeup.
for the
I'm
wigs.
looking through. Um,
For the wigs.
yeah, no, we're just not. I mean, also too, like I mean, I think I just want to give a shout out if he's ever listening out there, Josh Parham. He brings up a pretty good point that the makeup branch can do some pretty bold choices, but at the same time, they can do some very questionable ones where it's like, really, we're gonna keep doing this over and over again, like like the fat suits or whatever. Okay, and I'm like, yeah, he's got a point.
Yeah,
Even if
yeah.
they do it a really good job, it's like, yeah, I don't know, because yeah, yeah, no, like I said though, no makeup nomination for When Harry Met Sally, but yeah, yeah, director though, like that, I I would have been curious to see Rob Reiner get like a director nomination somewhere down the road, because the fact that like he couldn't get in for, if I remember correctly, A Few Good Men. He got, was it, he got snubbed for I think it was The Player, which was a really well directed movie too. And it's shocking, yeah. Rob Reiner just seems very much like yeah, he's too much of a commercial guy, I guess, and like
Yeah, I think he's in the sort of comedy commercial thing. The Academy still hasn't really accepted that. I don't know. There's something.
there's something off about it, and
Mm.
it's a shame. Yeah, he never really got to do anything. Well, as far as I remembered, anything that was outside of that wheelhouse, which is a good wheelhouse he's in. American President is a good one, but at the same time, it's like, okay, there's you know. It just happens. Someone gets an Oscar nomination, some people don't. I think Rob Reiner did get a producing nomination for A Few Good Men, which is good enough. But
But the thing about Rob Reiner, sometimes if you sort of forget about what an amazing bounty of work he's done, and then not to mention going forward, wasn't he behind Seinfeld as well? And he has this incredible, or one of the people behind
mhm.
that somehow. I just feel that he really, when you start looking through his CV or IMDb, you're like, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it's shocking. I mean, yeah, even Misery was another one where it's like that's kind of a different movie for you to do, and Stand by Me, and even The Princess Bride. Oh yeah, I keep forgetting that.
My God, and Spinal
Yeah,
Tap,
Spinal Tap.
like
Yeah,
classic.
yeah. I do recall the not to. I don't want to bring any dour notes on it, but I recall the Ebert and Siskel review for their infamous review for North. But
Oh,
every director, I mean,
of
even every actor
course.
has like one bad movie on their table, you know, which is fine. A lot of directors rebound, and I think he did with American President and maybe a couple other things, but I can't remember. But yeah, regardless though, yeah, like I said, I guess like the lone screenplay nod is justified, and yeah, just looking at the lineup here, it would have been kind of tough for someone like Billy Crystal or Meg Ryan, and yeah, Carrie Fisher would have been a pretty good choice. I mean, hell, the fact that she never got, I mean, as you said, she never really got much of a chance to do anything like this, um, you know, throughout her career, where she only got like few opportunities like this. But you know, like I said, it just happens. So, yeah. So, unless there's anything else you want to bring up, note for the show, I think we could wrap up. If that's all right with you.
That was fun. No, that was great.
Awesome. So once again, I just want to say thank you again, Christina, for dedicating your time to be here on the show. Before we sign off officially, is there anything you'd like to plug in, or where our listeners can follow you along?
Oh, thank you. Well, you can follow me on Twitter, or X, I guess it's called now, at Christina Birro, Birro, one word. It's the same on Instagram. My show is Pop Culture Confidential, so popcultureconfidential.com, or wherever you get your podcasts, or Spotify, and that's about it.
Nice. And also, I will also want to point out, I would highly recommend anyone out there who is interested in listening about the Oscars, listen to our podcast, Pop Cultural Confidential. I got a chance to hear you guys talk, you, Sophia, Eric, and Ryan talk. I think it was last month or so, talking about the Telluride Film Festival, and there's a
Yeah.
few on there that I'm like, ooh, I'm excited to see, for sure.
Oh, great.
So,
And they'll will all be on again soon, in a couple weeks actually. We're doing sort of a post festival um after like the AFI Fest. We're gonna get together again and talk about where we see award season right
Mhm.
now.
Yeah. Yeah, this year is definitely gonna be interesting. I won't say
Oof.
on the air, but all I will say is I think there's one category that I mean, I kinda wanna be on the double edge, be like the double coin, so to speak. Like, on the one hand, I wanna say we're open in one category, but on the other, I'm like, "Yeah, I think this is kinda sewn up," but yeah, we could talk about that off air if you want.
Yeah, I'm curious now.
So anyways, as for me, you could follow along on the show and on the show itself through Linktree under at Matthew995, where you can follow along on all my social media accounts such as Twitter and Letterbox. On the same site, I provided a link for where you could listen to more of the episodes for the show, including this one. And if you're interested in being in the hot seat in the near future, let me know. And hopefully we can arrange that happening soon. In the meantime, we hope you enjoyed listening to the episode, and we hope to see you at the movies. Take care, guys.
Bye.